Okay, I am finally back making some more coconut yogurt. I've been so looking forward to doing this and had to wait until we got into a little bit cooler temperatures so that we didn't have air conditioning going all the time because unfortunately we do have some mold in this house, which the air conditioners kind of blow around and that's no good. So what I wanted to do was make a double batch of one portion just the L-Gaceri, which I have made before, and this time I am keeping the container in the fridge and also in a Ziploc bag in the container as well. So doing everything I can to preserve it, because if you've seen my earlier videos, you know that I did have some real problems with that coming and being stuck in kind of a clumpy mess after a while, and also just creating really moldy yogurt. And I did contact Mercola about that, and they sent me this free container full of replacement ones because that's not supposed to happen. So I'm hopeful that just keeping it in the fridge will keep it from going bad again so quickly, because that was really fast last time. So, but when this stuff works, it is the best. I love it when it comes out well. It's great coconut yogurt. So I was all hopeful to make that, and then also do my very first batch of B. Subtilis or Subtilis or Subtilis. I'm hearing it pronounced all sorts of different ways. I usually just call it Subtilis, so that's what I'm going to go with, and my apologies if that's incorrect. However, what I found is that as I was rushing to get this going, because it was kind of a last minute decision to do it, I had planned to make it together with the other yogurt, so half and half, but it turns out that it actually has to be done at a lower temperature and only for 24 hours. So even though you can see both of them there, I'm actually going to skip the L-Gaceri this time and just do the B. Subtilis. I'm using the same canned coconut milk that I have used previously that is unfortunately very, very high in water. That's really sad, but it's actually fairly inexpensive, which is a big deal for me. So that's what I've been using. And also because I'm testing this for the first time after the warm summer days, I just wanted to use something that was cheaper and easier than making my own. And next time I will make my own for sure out of the shredded coconut, but not today because we want to just kind of get this going as quickly as possible. And this is actually a pretty time-consuming process to get started with. Once it's cooking, it's not a problem, but just getting it all ready is a bit of work. And for me, with severe chronic fatigue, it definitely does wipe me out pretty badly. So what I'm starting with here is 4 cans of the coconut milk, and I'm also leaving a little bit in one of the cans because I'm going to be making the slurry as we get this all going. So I've got the burner on and things are moving. And in the meantime, I am adding in 2 tablespoons of agar. So I thought I would go with that again. As I've said before, you can also use gelatin, that will work. And I like them both, so next time I may use gelatin, we'll see. It's also a lot cheaper to use gelatin. If you're like me, you are not vegan, and so either one will work. If you are vegan, you will want to go with the agar and not the gelatin. So making my slurry, and I'm really pleased to see that I seem to have come up with just the right amount of liquid this time, so it didn't make a big mess, and it did mix in very nicely. And I'm starting with that, but I am also going to add in some inulin just to give this yogurt as much to feed on as possible, because we want these probiotics to be just proliferating as much as they possibly can in the 24 hours. I'm actually really happy to just do 24 hours because that means that there's just not as much time to develop mold. So that's a big plus for me. And I may in the future just do some 24-hour ones with the other kinds of probiotics as well, but we'll see. This one I know for sure Dr. Davis did say to just do 24 hours. And again, of course, he's talking about regular yogurt, not coconut yogurt, because that's not really very much on his radar. But I figure if that's good enough for the regular yogurt, especially since I am adding in coconut sugar this time as well, so it's got lots to chew on, then 24 hours should get it pretty well sorted out. So we'll see how it goes. So just mix it together and dump it all in, and then just basically try and get it as mixed up as possible. So as you'll see, I do use a little bit of lots of stirring, and then also use the frother as well, which seems to work really nicely. And I am adding in 2 tablespoons of coconut sugar. I'm not sure if that's the right amount or not, to be honest, because I am completely guessing. I can't find any instructions on this anywhere. I haven't seen anything from Dr. Davis's book about what to do with this one, because I know back when he wrote the book, he was promoting the coagulants, not the Subtilis, and since then he has switched over because he's found the Subtilis to be a better product. So it hasn't really given a whole lot of information. There is one video out there that will give you some idea, but at the same time, it doesn't give you all of the information. It doesn't tell you how much to put in there, and it doesn't tell you anything about coconut yogurt. So we're just winging it here, and hopefully this will be useful, and if it comes out really well, then this will be potentially something that people can use to continue to make this particular kind. Now, what's nice about the B. subtilis is that it is a spore probiotic, which means that it's going to really hang around in your gut, and that's what we want. I am taking also in pill form the Mega Spore Biotic pill, which I did make a previous video of trying to make yogurt out of that, and it did work technically, but it really did not taste good. I don't know if it's just that mix of the different probiotics in there, or maybe the temperature was wrong. I'm really not sure. So I'm not probably going to do that again because they are really, really expensive. And I'm hopeful that the B. subtilis, which I got from the same company, will work better. And if it does, that means that I don't have to spend nearly as much money on spore probiotics, which are really helpful for my gut. But like I said, they're crazy expensive and very difficult to get in Canada, because then we have to pay exchange rate and shipping and duty and sometimes tariffs. And you add that all together and you've got some crazy expensive pills. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to find anything that is an equivalent in Canada at this point. But for now, this is what we're doing. And my health situation is such that I really need to make sure that my gut is in the best possible condition. So I brought that up to a good boil and checked the temperature eventually and just made sure, we just want to make sure everything is really good and boiling, because we want to kill anything bad that we would not want to be fermenting for the next 24 hours. And then from there, I just take it off the stove, and as I have been doing just to speed up the process, I put it in a pan of cold water and this time I'm adding ice cubes as well, and then I change out that pan of cold water several times just to make sure that it's as cold as possible, because we want this to go quickly. Even though I don't have air blowing around and whatnot, I don't want it to be sitting for any longer than it needs to with the lid off, because there's always the potential for some mold spores to get in there and just other junk floating around in the air. So hoping and praying that this one works well. Now, you'll see there that I started by checking the temperature with the meat thermometer, and certainly that's what I will continue to do when it's at the high temperature. But I am going to change things up a little bit here as it cools off and gets much closer to body temperature. So I let that get down and to the low temperature so that we're really close to room temperature. And made a big fat mess changing things out. So that was not ideal, but that is how it goes sometimes. You get to see all my mistakes, and lots of water spilled everywhere, and some coconut milk spilled a little bit as well, but not too badly. Thankfully, my husband swoops in and helps wipe up some of the water for me, which was very nice of him. So there we are. There's the one that we're going to use this time. And as soon as it's done, I'll get going on the Algaseri, hopefully. Now, once we get down to close to body temperature, which is what the probiotics tend to like, I am going to do what many of you have suggested under my videos, and that is compare what this temperature says to what a thermometer used to measure your body temperature would say, because that apparently would be probably your most accurate, because it needs to be. Whereas when you're just checking meat temperature, it's okay if it's a little bit up or a little bit down. So I'm just going to compare them at the same time and see what we end up with. First, I'm just stirring things around as much as possible just to get it all mixed. And you can see that it's already coagulating because we're down too close to the right temperature. And that is where it is the most difficult thing with making this kind of coconut yogurt, is that it gets pretty chunky before you even put it into the yogurt maker. Well, it does get a little thick and lumpy. It does work still, so I'm not too worried about that. Now, when I check the temperature, comparing, we've got 108 showing on the meat thermometer, as you can see there, and what we ended up with the body temperature thermometer, we ended up at 101, and that is quite a significant difference. So I'm a little concerned with that. But I will also say that I know some of you might be concerned that, hey, I complained to the company and they sent me a new unit because of the massive temperature difference. However, I'm still glad that I did that, because the temperature difference was still enough that even if this one was measuring a little bit high, it was not that much higher. It was still showing that there was quite a difference. So it definitely was legitimately a problem with how much the temperature changed. And then we're just mixing it up again, and already it's dropping again really well. So I'm already at about the temperature that I want it to be at. From what I can tell, Dr. Davis, he has recommended around 95 Fahrenheit for this particular yogurt to be made at. So that's what I'm going to aim for. And of course, next thing is to just get this ready and stir it up as well as I can. We don't want to use the frother, which wouldn't really work with it that thick anyway, because that would be not great for the probiotics. And then I'm just going to pour it in. I do use this measuring cup just because it does help create a little bit less of a mess, although you can see here I do make a bit of a mess periodically. A little bit, not too bad. And then I just bang them down and move the spoon around as much as I can in them and get them all sorted out and try to get as much air out as possible. So we want everything to fit in there and not have a lot of air. Air is not great for getting these to ferment properly. So I pack them all up, stick them in, and we're going to set it for 93 degrees just because I know that it will still go a little hotter than that, which is not ideal. And I'm doing this one for 24 hours. And now checking the temperature with 22 hours left, and I am very much liking that. That's excellent. Still a little bit higher than what I set it for, but it's workable. That's actually a good temperature. So I'm very happy with that. And then checking it again the next morning with 10 hours left. And we're at 96.4, which is again excellent. I'm very happy with how this is working. It does seem to work better using the small containers versus the larger containers. The two larger containers are easier to use, but the small containers do seem to allow for it to sit at the right temperature, a much closer temperature. The larger containers do seem to generate a little bit more heat, which is not ideal. So I'm very happy with how this is going so far and looking forward to seeing the final product and giving it a taste. And our final product, measuring both temperatures, the body temperature thermometer came out at 93.1 and the meat thermometer came out at 102. So that's a pretty significant difference. Like I said, still not such a difference that I was in any way wrong having a problem with my original unit that had a much, much larger difference in temperature than even that. But what I will do in the future is use the meat thermometer when it's at a super high temperature still. And then once we get down closer to where we want it, I'll start using the body temperature thermometer, and then I'll have a better idea of exactly where we are. So from there, of course, the next thing to do is to give it a test and see how it goes. And I opened all the lids and saw that there is definitely no mold, so that's great. And had to give it a try. And I found that actually it is fairly creamy. It's creamier than the Spore Probiotic yogurt that I made previously, but it does still have kind of that weird flavor that I guess is a Spore Probiotic flavor. So it's not great, it's not like really disgusting, like it's gone bad or anything, but it's not the nicest flavor. I'm going to guess maybe if you make this with regular dairy, it probably isn't as much of an issue. It's just that coconut milk has its own flavor and they don't mix as well. So, but still absolutely edible and great for the gut. And my goal is when I eat this to mix in some cinnamon and some stevia, because those together with it actually make it quite a nice flavor. So overall, I am really, really happy with how this turned out. So I hope this was helpful for you. And if you see anyone else making this particular Spore Probiotic into a yogurt, whatever kind it may be, please feel free to share in the comments below, because we want as much information as possible. It seems like there's not a whole lot out there yet with this one. So please do share that, and we'll hopefully all together find the best way to make this. So thank you again for watching, and God bless.